Hello and welcome back to this video. In this section, I am going to lay the foundation of how we will be writing all control statements in Python. And even though we are focusing on the conditional control statement here, there are other control statements in Python which are written following the same rules over here. When I talk of a control statement, I am talking of an expression that lets you take control of how your program is executed. You remember that so far all our programs have been executed from top to bottom, and we have had no control on how the execution goes, except the fact that we write our statements sequentially. And so what control statements helps us to do is one, branching, which is what we're going to learn about in this section, and the next is looping, which we'll also take a look at after we have studied some other data structures or data types. Okay, so because this section focuses on branching with conditionals, that is what I'm going to use to explain the structure for you to understand. And so I want to start off by saying branching with conditionals allow us to write programs that execute a group of statements depending on whether a specific condition evaluates to true or false. So like I explained earlier, you want to write program statements that are executed based on some condition. Okay? And it requires a special construct or layout of your code. And Python, unlike other programming languages out there, uses white spaces and indentation to delimit scope. What I mean by a scope is a block in your code where, for now, I would say a variable is valid or accessible. And some other programming languages uses the curly bracket to delimit scopes, especially the C family of languages. But Python deviates from this here, and it is very, very tricky for beginners. And that is why I've taken my time to explain to you very well. Otherwise, it is going to be the source of nightmare. I can promise you, if you do not strive to understand what is going on here, indentation can be the number one source of nightmare for you, the beginner who is trying to learn how to program in Python. And so I want to have your full attention here so that you will be able to understand what is going on. And to do that, I'm going to use the general format in which we write if statements in Python. Okay, so you want to execute a group of statements based on some condition. And the construct that Python makes available for you is through the if keyword. And so the way you express your intention of making your code base or your program execution conditional is to use the if condition or the if statement. And the format is you bring the if keyword and then you bring your condition or your conditional expression. These conditional expressions are formed usually using the logical operators and comparison operators. I haven't taught you logical operators yet, but it is part of this section. However, you already know about the comparison operators. Stuff like you're checking if one value is equal to another value, where you use the double equal signs, which I told you is for equality. You can also do less than, greater than, less or equal to, greater or equal to, and not equal to. These are the operators that we usually use to form the conditions. And if you want to form compound conditions, then we merge multiple conditions using the logical operators, which we will talk about. So after you have created your condition, which we will see how to do very soon, in an actual programming session, you bring this colon. It is required, okay? And once you bring the colon, you want to start indenting your code. And indentation is done with white spaces. So you bring a couple of white spaces before your statement begins. The number of white spaces that must come is a contention within the Python community. There are people who like to use 4 spaces. There are people who want to use the tab character. And they all have valid technical reasons why they go for whichever one they go for. My advice to you on that is to stick to whatever convention your team uses. You want to be a team player, and if you want to fit into a team, you always have to lay aside your own preferences and do what the team collectively wants to do. So that is it. Just in case you get an engagement somewhere and there is a contention between how many spaces should we use for indentation, you know the answer I will give you. Just follow the convention of the team. However, most of these editors have built-in support for that. So when we start writing code with conditional checks, you will see that the moment I bring the colon, Visual Studio Code will start the indentation process for me. In that, the cursor on the next line will move a little bit more into the line before I start typing my programming statement over there. Very important for you to understand. That is why I have taken my time to explain this to you. So now you have your condition, you have your colon. The next thing is to indent all your statements that are supposed to be executed when that condition is true. So the first thing is which statement or statement, because it can be one or more. That is why I have written statement 1, statement 2, all the way to statement n. You can write just one statement if that is what is required to get your program to do what you want it to do. You can also write multiple statements if that is required for you to get your program to do what you want it to do. The most important thing here is to get your indentation right. So you make sure that all those statements that are supposed to be executed when the condition is true are indented. Okay, they are on the same line. You can visually see if something is out of order. For example, if I do this, I know that statement 2 is out of order. And this is going to make Python very pissed off, and it is going to give you a hell of a time. And so you want to make sure that all your statements are indented until the end of the if check. However, sometimes we also want to have an else check. What the else does is, if the condition evaluates to false, then the program statements that are indented under the else are the ones that are going to be executed. And over here too, we do the indentation the same way. You bring the else keyword, your colon, and then you indent your statement in the order in which they are supposed to be executed. So what is going to happen is, let's assume that line 12 to line 25 are actually valid Python statement, which is false, but I'm just using that as an example. What is going to happen is, up until line 13, Python is going to execute your program sequentially like it always does. But on line 13, it is going to have to check whether the condition you have specified evaluates to true or false. And based on that, it is going to execute either line 14 to line 19, or it will execute line 20 to line 22, depending on the outcome of the conditional check. After which, the normal flow of program execution is going to continue, because the if block is delimited by the start of the if, the condition, the else, and the last statement in the else block. Then everything else has to be indented the normal way. I hope this makes sense to you, and if you don't understand it yet, I want you to rewatch this video before we go into the hands-on section where I'm going to show you how to apply what we've learned here. So let's take a quick break and I'll see you in the next video.